Hello again, welcome to Talking Vault. This is part 2 of our 2 men and a vault adventure. I'm going to state the obvious first of all. Let's the one document management system that everybody's got, Windows Explorer.
Yes.
It gives us enough information, only just, but it gives us enough information. We've got the folder structure, we've got the file type, and we've got when it was saved. So I know that that file's called box IPT. It was saved on the 24th of November, roughly about dinner time, and it's an inventor part file. Fantastic, but it doesn't tell me where that box IPT is used. I'm going to use that as part of my current design, and I'm going to drill a great big hole through the middle of it. But what happens if that box is already used on 14 other assemblies? All of a sudden bridges start falling down and aeroplanes start falling out of the sky because we broke the other design.
Yeah.
What I need to do is find out where it's used. If all I'm doing is adding the chamfer to the edge to stop people cutting themselves on a sharp corner, I can probably do that to every occurrence of that box, that IPT. But if I'm doing something a bit more meaningful, changing the design intent of it, I've got to make sure that I'm only changing it for me and not for everybody else. Windows Explorer will tell me what it is and where it is, but not a lot else. It won't tell me what it uses. Doesn't tell me where it's used. It'll allow me to copy and paste. We've all done that, Control C, Control V, but I don't know that that box is on a drawing. So I have to copy the drawing, and then I've got to open the drawing and change the reference to reference the new box file. So there's 3 lots of work for every file that I copy. I can move the file quite easily, drag and drop, and I've got a reasonably good chance of Inventor catching up with that, so long as I move the file within the scope of the current project. If the file isn't in this folder, it might be in that folder. Oh, there it is. I'll go and grab it. Everybody's happy.
Yeah. Right.
But if I move the file outside the scope of the current project, Inventor's got no chance of finding it. So moving stuff, you might get away with. Renaming files, you are going to cause yourself problems because the drawing is looking for box.ipt. It is not looking for cube.ipt. It'll never find it. Now, if I've just renamed the file and then I open the drawing, I can remember what I did 30 seconds ago. I'm okay. But if I'm working in a drawing office that's got 25 people and we're all moving and renaming files all the time, the problem there is I don't know what Mike did to that file last week when he renamed it and moved it to a different location. Last week, last year, you know, we're in trouble. I can't find box.ipt. I don't know who to ask to find out who changed the name to and what they changed the name to. The other thing about Windows Explorer, there's no traceability. You can set security up to allow read only or read and write, deletes and modifications, but you can't track who deleted it, who modified it. So, you know, it's changed. It's not the one I used last week, but who changed it and why did they change it? As a set of files, what we're working on today is fairly simple. It doesn't represent anything that any of the attendees on this webinar make. I'd like to think that you all make something a little bit more complex. I have a drawing, I've saved it. I know that this drawing contains references to various things, like references to an assembly. Inventor will tell me that that assembly then contains sub-assemblies, which in turn contain components. So I can track my uses quite easily with Inventor. But I don't know, without looking at the drawing as I am now, if I've opened up the box derived IPT in its own right, I've got no clear indication of where it's used, what parts, what assemblies, what drawings it's used on. So which is why we use Vault, or a document management system. This is at this point a document management system. We're looking at managing CAD files. Vault Basic, it ships with the product. You've got a copy of it for every copy of Inventor, and it will look after the files for you. But it doesn't do much beyond that. The files themselves, it's all well and good having access in the drawing office to that file, but we wouldn't have access to it in other departments within the business. That's where your higher levels of Vault Workgroup, Vault Professional will come in because they're a licensed product. Anybody can fire up Vault Workgroup if you've got a license and access, view, manipulate the data if you've got the rights and privileges to do that. Purchasing could have a copy, or they could then query the Vault, and the shop floor could access it and print their own drawings. Yeah. So first thing we need to do, we need to check the files in. We need to make Vault aware of the files. Checking in, similar to what we do in the 1950s, you create a drawing, then you go and put it in a drawing cabinet when you finish with it. Now tomorrow morning, when you want to do something on the shop floor, want that, they never get the original because that's locked away under lock and key. They get a copy. They get an ammonia copy, a blueprint. that they can do with what they want. But by copying or placing these files into the vault, we basically locked it away, and we've recorded, snapshotted the design, the data at that point in time.
Yeah.
It's now secure. I can never get hold of that original data, but I can get as many copies of it as I want. So in the vault world, looking at the server itself, we can now see we've got the design folder, simple project, we've got the drawings are listed there, we've got some more information. Vault's based on the look and feel of Outlook. So if you can send an email, you can drive Vault. Paraphrasing it slightly, but that's the gist. Down the left hand side, we've got our folder structure, which is our inbox, outbox, dead simple. And then at the top, we've got a list of emails, we've got a list of files that are in our vault, and at the bottom, you've got the information about the email itself, the text, the information about the files. So clicking on the drawing there, we can see a history, we've got a thumbnail, we know what we're looking at before we have to open it up. Uses, this is a drawing, it uses the general arrangement assembly, which in turn uses two separate sub-assemblies, each of which use their own parts. The primitive derived assembly uses the box derived part, and there's a part file which is usually your down at the atomic level, that's the lowest form of component. Lots of simple parts become assemblies, which become GAs, which become more and more complex, but parts themselves can be linked. So in this case we can see that the box IPT is used as a starting point, if you like, for the box derived IPT, which then is used on the sub-assemblies and the parent assemblies and the drawings. We can look up downhill, we can look uphill. If I click on one of these files, for example, I can then go to that folder. It puts me in the right place within Vault. I don't need to know where the folder is, which I would do in Windows Explorer. I've got to go and find it.
Yeah.
Here I can just jump and bounce backwards and forwards. Now the part bottom of the tree doesn't use anything. I can't find this without using a brute force search. I could spend an hour looking for where this is used. If I've got hundreds of thousands of files, I could spend days trying to find where it's used.
Yeah.
With Vault, click on the Where Used tab. It's used directly on another IPT and as a component within an assembly, which in turn is used on the general arrangement, which in turn is used on its drawing. So I can look uphill and downhill.
So in that example there, you need to make a change to that part. You then identify the implications of making that change.
Exactly, because I'm going to break box derived.
Yeah.
Now again, if it's just a chamfer to stop at a sharp corner, I can probably make that change everywhere. So I'll make the change and everybody else will accommodate it later on.
Yeah.
But if I'm drilling a great big hole in the middle of this component for a sensor or a thing for me, I now know I can't drill it in the box derived component because that particular feature isn't required. So I need to create a new component. It's not a revision that can be swapped out here and there. It's a new component and it's a new design for my current. As you make modifications, I think the simplest thing I can do here is just literally change the view. It's asking me, do I want to take ownership? If I'm just, I'll say playing around, I'm doing some experimentation with this file.
Yeah, Vault is intended as a replacement to Windows Explorer because you've taken your parts there from Windows Explorer, you've checked them into Vault. Vault is the font of all knowledge from a design engineer's point of view.
Yeah.
You've taken the files from whatever media source through Windows Explorer, you know, drip feeding it into Vault as you go along.
Yeah.
As you do a line in the sand approach, perhaps with a blank Vault, you just make a start with it, or you bring them in off a memory stick, or through email attachments from a customer or from a Dropbox or wherever.
Yeah.
Bring it into the Vault, and at that point, it then gets entered into the company's design engineering history of creating, modifying, executing, retiring those parts, assemblies, sub-assemblies, GAs. And now that it's in the Vault, you're now looking at making changes.
Making changes, yeah, tracking that history.
Yeah.
As Explorer, I open a file, I modify it, click save, I've lost the original.
Yeah.
I open a file, click change it again, click save, I've lost yesterday's. So after a week, I've only got one version of that file, but I've made 5 changes.
Yeah.
With Vault, every change you make and commit back to Vault sits on top of what was already there. It doesn't overwrite what was already there. So I don't have to check the file out. I can manipulate it and I can experiment. I can what if on a drawing, a model, a thing, and at the end, nah, that doesn't work. Bug out and just walk away.
Yeah.
I can take ownership of the file,
which is what you're about to do.
Which is what I'm about to do now. Check it out. I can do what I want to this file now, but Mike, as the other designer, you've still got access to that data in Vault, but you've got read-only access to it. So you can carry on using these components in your GA while I'm in the process of rejigging the design and updating it for mine.
Yeah, I can view and do stuff too, but you've got the stick at the end of the day.
Yeah,
when it comes to that part, you've got the stick.
I'm in charge, I'm the boss. So I'm going to take ownership of this file. I'm just going to manipulate it. Basically, I'm just going to change it enough so on a thumbnail that we can see that it's changed. And click save. All the data has been saved on my machine, because this is another side benefit. Performance. Hopefully, everybody using Inventor in general is working off a server, because the server tends to get backed up, whereas your own PC doesn't.
Yeah.
So God forbid you lose 100,000 files because of a fire. But at least you've got the tape drive from the day before, and you can restore it after a period and away you go. You check out, you got your history, you check back in, and the performance of the system, because we're running off my own computer, it's the fastest my computer will ever be. So I get the data off the server in the first thing in the morning, I work on my machine during the day, and I put it back effectively on the server at night through the act of checking that file back in. So checking it back in at 5 o'clock at night just before I go home for my tea. And then go up back into Vault and refresh the files and look at the drawing. In the history tab, we can now see we've got a record of what we've done.
Yeah.
So over a week we'd have 5 versions, over a month we'd have 25 versions, whatever it happens to be. We can always go back and grab that file from last week. I took a design decision that turned left, I should have turned right. So I can take a step back, grab the data from a previous point in time, and then go off at a tangent, using that as my starting point.
And it won't remove the latter versions after that.
No,
you don't need
no.
to. It'll just go back a few skips, and that then becomes the current version. True.
So the history is the biggie, because it understands and it doesn't lose any data. Now once we've got a file that we're happy with, and I then print that piece of paper, give it to somebody, they sign it, and the shop floor goes and makes it. Well, the issue is it the right one? A piece of paper sat on somebody's desk, there's no guarantee that actually that's the one I should be printing.
Yeah,
that's the one I should be working on.